It had been many months since Bert's encounter with a spectral steam engine. He kept to himself when other engines would arrive at the smelters to drop off or pick up scrap. Arry, however, remained unchanged.
Better hide in the tunnel, Henry.
He oozed.
Looks like it's gonna rain.
I'm not afraid of the rain anymore.
Henry hissed.
You should be, 'cause rain makes you wet. And if you are wet, you rust. Soon you'll be so rusty you'll fall apart and join the other kettles here.
Henry snorted and puffed away. Bert just looked away.
And what's gotten into you?
Arry asked as he came up.
Where's the Bert who's always had me back and letting those useless steamers know what happens to him?
He's still here,
Bert grumbled.
but maybe it's just not worth it. I mean, I've not seen any new diesels on this line, have you?
Hardly an excuse. Those kettles are all going away, making way for us. And they seem to forget that, thinking they'll go on forever. When Fat Hat comes around, it'll be goodbye to them.
Arry chuckled before oiling away to do some shunting. The next day, the foreman spoke to them. There's a load of scrap iron on the mainland to be delivered here. But Shatopper says all his engines are busy, so I'll need one of you to collect it. Arry oozed forward.
I'll go pick it up, sir.
Then the job is yours. If you leave now, you'll make it back in time before closing.
Watch and learn, Bert.
Arry said.
I'll find some modern diesels like us who want to come here and drive those useless kettles to the sidings.
As Arry rolled away, Bert sniffed. He had wanted to mention something his driver had read in the newspaper, but he was annoyed with his twin. Maybe this would shut him up. The sun was just setting as Arry rolled over the bridge leading from Sodor to the mainland. The sun shimmered on the water like molten metal in the smelters.
Now isn't this a grand sight?
He said to himself. Very soon, the sunset was gone, and the sky was dark by the time Arry rolled into the yard. It was packed with trucks and waiting diesels.
Now, where's this train I'm meant to collect?
He asked himself. Slowly, from the mist, a diesel pulling a goods train rolled into the yard and stopped.
Ah, hello, my good engine.
Arry called out.
I'm looking for a train. Any chance you know where that is?
The other diesel growled and looked down at Arry. Do I look like a bloomin' directory? Push off back to your cold, damp siding. It growled before purring away. Arry was confused.
That's no way to speak to a fellow diesel. What's got up his exhaust?
He didn't have long to wonder as another diesel backed down onto the train pushing some tankers, adding them on. Arry spoke up again.
Hello? I'm looking for a train of scrap heading for Sodor. Where do I find that?
The diesel stared at Arry coldly. It stared for so long, it seemed like it was looking through him. Arry felt a shiver run down his cab.
Over there, shunter,
the diesel said, looking across the yard toward some dark sidings.
Thank you.
Arry said hastily, and he oiled away. The other diesel watched him go till he was out of sight. Arry moved his way along the dark sidings slowly. It seemed quieter here. He felt himself getting a bit nervous. The yard lights on this end of the yard were out, so he could hardly see. Soon he found the waiting trucks and coupled up. He wanted to go, but the signal rose and he was stuck in the siding. As he looked around, he saw a long line of square shapes on a siding nearby. In the gloom, they looked like vans. But the closer he looked, he saw they were diesel shunters. And not just diesel shunters, but other diesels as well. They hadn't spoken a word as he had come over. "Is it time?" a voice asked. Arry looked up, wondering whose voice had spoken. It wasn't his driver. It had come from his left, from one of the diesels. "No," said another voice. This one was closer. "This is another train." The same voice then said in a lower tone, "It's one of us." "Oh no, another sent to the sidings?" the first voice asked. "No, he's here doing work. How fortunate."
So what?
Arry grumbled.
Of course I'm doing work. Why are you over here resting? This yard is a mess. I had to ask 2 diesels where my train was.
"Who said we were resting? We're not resting."
Well, you're not being useful if you're just sitting over there.
A long pause hung over the air before the second voice spoke again. "That's just it. We are not useful. Not anymore."
What does that mean? Diesels like us are always useful. We're the future.
A deep, mournful sigh was heard, and the second voice continued. "We were the future, but that was years ago. Now we're yesterday's news. Last year's model. Trash." Arry began to get nervous. This diesel wasn't talking like he expected. Diesels were the future, and his class had been the future. Diesel himself was proof enough that diesels were better than steam engines, more useful, more reliable, more revolutionary.
What do you mean? We replaced all those useless kettles, so of course we're useful. We're not trash, we're revolutionary.
"Steam engines," the first voice said suddenly. "How I wish I was a steam engine." "We all wish that," the second voice said, talking to the first. "But that's not to be." Arry was now very confused. Why would a diesel want to be an inefficient, useless engine? Something weak and ancient.
Okay, are you all on some bad fuel? No diesel on Earth would ever want to be a steam engine. They're old, clapped out, smoky, smelly.
Timeless. Timeless and precious. Not many left. But diesels? There are so many of us. Why would anyone want to preserve us? My dear engine, you are blind. Blind and stuck in an era that has long since passed. Shunters like us, we're vermin. Nothing timeless or precious about us. If you don't understand that now, you will soon. We used to work here. Now, we await our fates. Suddenly, the yard light flicked on to illuminate the diesels before Arry. They were filthy, caked in grime and rust, with the words "scrap" painted in bold letters on their sides. Arry gasped, staring at them. So many diesels. At least 8 shunters and 2 heavy goods diesels sat on their sidings. Many didn't even look up or acknowledge his presence. The owner of the second voice was looking right at him. His face was filthy and covered in rust streaks. His eyes widened as he read Arry's side. "Sodor! You're from Sodor!"
Yes.
Arry said slowly. "Take me with you. I'll do any work that's asked of me. Just take me away." "No, take me. I'll work with steam engines." The whole line of diesels woke up. Each began begging to be saved, taken to Sodor with Arry. Arry felt very crowded. Slowly the voices became more pleading, and also fighting between the voices began to ring out. Engines began putting down others, rather horrid names spewing from their mouths. Arry felt helpless, seeing so many engines, diesel engines, at their throats, sniping each other, all for the possibility of survival. Suddenly, the signal dropped, and Arry charged out of the siding, dragging the scrap train behind him as quick as he could. The voices still echoed behind him. They begged for him to come back, to save them, and then, worse, calling him a traitor to his brethren, a traitor to all diesels. Arry didn't look back once, and he didn't stop until he rumbled over the bridge, back onto Sodor. Bert was just fueling up after a long day. He'd finished shunting the scrap into the shed for the workers to get started in the morning. The honk of a horn brought his attention up. He looked up to see Arry hiss through the mist into the yard and stop at the fuel pump.
Hello, Arry. Have a good trip.
Bert oozed. Arry said nothing. He quietly shunted the train of scrap into a siding and then scuttled toward their sheds. Bert followed a moment later. He didn't speak when he joined his brother. He knew what he'd seen, and that Arry wouldn't be talking about scrapping steam engines for a while. The scrap twins are more tame nowadays. While they still tease the engines, the subject of scrapping them has never come back up. I suspect those two engines have changed for the better. Don't you?